foundation of the success of nutrient management in your crop farming. And with soil testing, it just helps you identify what your soil is lacking, what your soil needs, and it just guides all your fertilizer choices. However, these days we just put so many things in our soils, or we just use blanket applications: 4 bags D, 4 bags urea for maize. When you find that maybe there's your soils are high in nitrogen, you don't need as much nitrogen, or your soils are actually high in phosphorus, now you need to lower it, or you need to, get a perfect balance. And you find that commercial farmers are hitting their targets because they know exactly what their soils are lacking. Um, and then it also helps wasting money on unnecessary fertilizers. You find that you even lower your costs because you know exactly what you need. And maybe it's even in a lower amount. And then sometimes because we use too much fertilizers, you're in a situation where by now you're leaching your soils and you're making them very acidic. So in Zambia's tropical climate, soils can become very acidic due to heavy rains that, leach nutrients from the soil. So if you want to, for example, if your soils are very acidic, you add agricultural lime to neutralize the acidity. So when you have the soil test, they'll tell you to neutralize your soils a bit. You can add, maybe they'll say 500 kg of lime or a ton of lime. You mix it in your soils. Or if your soils have a very high alkaline, they say to balance it, you can use gypsum. Others say you can even use ash just to balance the pH of your soils. So, so feeding your crops for maximum yields. So what is fertilizer? So fertilizers basically supply all the essential nutrients missing or insufficient in your soils, which help boost plant growth and also improve your yields. So when we come to fertilizers, we have our granular fertilizers. These are spread on the soil. And our granular fertilizers, we have our basal dressing. So basal dressing, these are applied at planting, before planting, but this is what you apply as your base. Very important. With usually, the most important nutrients you need are NPK, which is your nice nitrogen, phosphorus, and your potassium. Then we have water-soluble fertilizers. So these dissolve in irrigation water, which you can pump through the drip, or you can even spray them. If you are using a knapsack sprayer, you can either, drench in your soils or you spray on your leaves. It depends on how that fertilizer is. So water, yeah, it basically depends. Then we have foliar fertilizers. These are specific for the leaves. These, they help with quicker nutrient uptake, because we know that nutrients come, enter into the crop from the roots and then enter into the vessels till it goes up to the leaves where food is made. However, if you spray direct on the leaves, that contact with the leaves, gives it a quicker uptake of nutrients. However, it's not, I know there are people who just say, no, they're just using the liquid fertilizers, but it's important that you make a balance of all of them so that your crop doesn't lack anything. So nitrogen promotes lush, greeny growth. So if you are doing anything leafy, you know that, for example, your reps, these leafy vegetables, your cabbages, they require quite a lot of nitrogen. So if you see that, your crop is lacking in nitrogen, you see that it's yellowing and it's stunted growth. So you can apply urea or calcium ammonium nitrate, but avoid over application of these, because they can also prevent avoid over application to prevent delayed maturity. So if you over apply these, you can even delay maturity of your crop. And then phosphorus encourages good root growth, flowering, and fruiting. And then when you see that there's lack of phosphorus, you see that there's stunted growth in your crop or there are purple leaves. So you know, okay, there's a phosphorus deficiency here. So you can apply a single super phosphate or DAP at planting. And then potassium strengthens disease resistance and fruit quality. So if you're growing things like tomatoes, peppers, anything that's, you know, like has flowers that's going to fruit, you'd need something with potassium. So you see yellow margins on the stems and on the leaves. So you can apply as muriate of potash, so which is MOP. So this is during the growing season. So these are things you can keep in mind. So this is what we call our macronutrients, NPK. So yeah, if you're doing anything leafy, you know that okay, you need your nitrogen, and even if it's not anything really leafy, whatever you grow will require nitrogen, but even the amounts will vary. And then we have our secondary nutrients. These are also very important, but used in lower quantities. So calcium, this helps with, you know, your root development, your deficiency symptoms. You see poor growth or root tip death. You just see that your crop isn't doing so well. You pull it out of out of the ground, the roots aren't really okay. Then magnesium, this is what basically helps with chlorophyll and photosynthesis. So chlorophyll, basically the green part of the crop, and you just see that the leaves are yellowing. So you can use Epsom salts, this kind of sauces, dolomite, lime, and even just foliars. There are foliars where there's magnesium. So you just ask, okay, which foliar boosters can I use? So there are some which are vegetative. There are some for fruiting and flowering. So you see what is applicable for what you want to grow. So for your vegetative, so actually we have starter foliars. So this is like some weeks after germination. And then now when your crop is at vegetative stage, we have vegetative foliars. Maybe it's, for example, it's tomato, it's still becoming bush, it hasn't reached the fruiting and flowering stage. Yeah, it hasn't reached the fruiting and flowering stage. So you just want it to, you know, have a good what do you call it, a good bush, good vegetation. Even for crops like your green beans, your peppers, you do a vegetative. Then when it reaches the fruiting and flowering stage, you use the fruit and flower, and you notice that with that, maybe you find that there'll be more potassium and more phosphorus in that one, and then there's a lower dosage of nitrogen. And then it can also have a mix of these. So sulfur, magnesium, or calcium can also be found in those. Then the sulfur, which is good for protein synthesis, so in yellowing young leaves, and you can find it in elemental sulfur or gypsum. And then we have our micronutrients, so iron, magnesium, zinc, copper. All these are very important, though they're needed in small amounts. Deficiencies can severely reduce your yield. So it's important to just have a balance of everything. So what you can do before you grow anything, you just see, okay, what kind of crop am I growing? Do I need anything for fruiting and flowering? Do I need anything just specific for the leaves, if it's something which is just for leaves? So you just see what your crop would need, and all of these are very helpful. So for fruiting and flowering crops, we have there's Voema starter. So this is a Syngenta product, Voema starter. There's the vegetative, there's also fruit and flower. Then the other good one is Camabon. So Camabon is calcium, magnesium, and boron. So it has a lot of the micronutrients. So even Hygrotech also at Showgrounds does also have good foliar fertilizers. And there are also quite a number on the market, some that aren't very good and some that are actually good. So it really just depends where you source them. But my advice would be just go for the quality one. So like the Syngenta one, which I had mentioned, that one is also quite good. Osho as well does have some pretty good foliars, so those can also be used. There's the vegetative ones, there's the fruiting and flowering ones as well. So those can also be incorporated into what you want to do. Then fertilizer application and timing. So basal is at planting. So this helps, as you are planting, you ensure that you put your basal. If you decide to do it a little after, maybe after it germinates, ensure that it's away from your plant or away from your seed, because fertilizers do scorch seeds, and you find that when your plant is emerging, it's burnt with fertilizer. And then top dressing is done during vegetative and growth stages. So they boost growth and also replace lost nutrients. So you can apply nitrogen-rich fertilizers like calcium, ammonium nitrate 2 to 3 weeks after transplanting. So that's just an example. It really depends on what you're growing. And a wide range of fertilizers that are available. Amiran as well does have good fertilizers. A lot of them are water soluble. They are quite pricey, but very, very, very effective. If it's magnesium that you need, if it's potassium that you need the most, you get that nutrient and it will work for whatever you're going to grow. So for like your tomatoes, your peppers, potato, you find that you have good specific ones, which are your micro and your basically your micronutrients, which would be able to find from them. So it's important to lightly incorporate basals into soil to prevent volatilization. So what this means is that whenever anyone is fertilizing your crop, don't allow soil fertilizer to be left on the surface. Ensure that even after planting, you cover that fertilizer, because if it evaporates, it loses its power and becomes volatile. So you don't want that to happen. They have to cover, then you water. If it means you have planted cabbage, 4 centimeters from the cabbage, they poke a hole, they put the fertilizer. If you're doing maize, the same thing. If you are applying on, maybe, for example, rape, you'd aerate your beds, apply the fertilizer, cover, irrigate. So ensure that whenever we are boosting your crop, fertilizer is covered. And that is a practice. There are a lot of people who say, no, we just leave the fertilizer on the surface. So make sure that you always cover your fertilizer and don't apply it right next to the plant, because you don't want a situation where you scorch it. So you apply it a few centimeters from your plant. So what you can do for every crop that you grow, you just see what kind of crop you are growing and what is important, what exactly you want to get from that crop. For example, if, like I mentioned, if it's your leafy ones, you know that you'd be more inclined to fertilizers that contain a bit more of your nitrogen, and some that have higher phosphorus levels. If it's your fruiting and flowering ones, you go for where you balance it up with the NPK, your magnesium, and your phosphorus. So you just do a mix of it, and then just see, because even with application of fertilizers, usually you can have a plan that, no, we'll be applying every 2 weeks, but if you notice something before 2 weeks, you step in and correct that issue. If you see, okay, it's still doing okay, you still follow that 2 weeks plan. But if you see a problem even before, step in and correct it. Add what is needed. See, okay, what is missing? What aren't we doing right? Have we gotten the quantities lower? What should we improve? That's why the soil test helps you make even better decisions than kind of doing guesswork with how you're applying. But usually for medium to small scale farmers, we kind of just, go with the flow, see how the crop is adjusting, which is a bad practice. We should all test our soils so that we know what is lacking and what is missing. So this year, I'm going to ensure that even when I plant maize, I'm going to test the soil this year so that we at least get the projected yields or the targeted yields that we can get from our crops. So just have all of those in mind: your basal dressing, your top dressing, and then your foliars. So keep that in mind, so that even as you go in the store, you ask, oh, what foliar fertilizers do you have available? Do you have the water we want to spray on the leaves? Which ones do you have for the leaves? Then you can even do a comparison. So Amiran has, Omnia Fertilizers have, ETG has. You can even just go to these places, compare the prices, see what is available, and then just do a price comparison and see what really works for your budget. And then you can take it up from there, because these companies have different things. But now we even have more companies on coming up with several fertilizers, some that aren't even very good, but there are new fertilizer companies on the market. You can also consult with them. Sometimes there's no harm to, trying out new things, because they are also entering into the Zambian market. So you can also try those as well. So soil is the life of your crop. If you don't take care of the soils, even your crops are more prone to diseases. So now we're going to look at spray programs. So spray program is also very, very important. And I always say this: prevention is better than cure. So others say, no, we only spray when we see that there's a disease, but we actually set a pest control program, disease control program, because this is very important for you as the farmer. Just don't wait for the disease to creep in, because it will become so expensive. Now you'll be running around trying to get the most expensive curative when you could have prevented whatever it is. So pests and diseases can wipe out your investment. So spraying is preventative and not just curative. So you prevent it. So when formulating a spray program, I call it the Powerful Four, because when I do my spray programs, none of these miss. So we have your insecticide, so these control your insects, pests, you name it. Then we have fungicides, these control fungal diseases. Then we have sticker, these help the chemicals stick to the leaf surfaces, increasing the effectiveness. Other people only spray sticker during the rain season. However, I feel like it's important that you still use your sticker even if it's not in the rain season. You still use your sticker. We still use it even if it's not the rain season, so that it's even more effective on the surface of your plant. Then another important one is a buffer. A buffer is what controls the pH of your water. You find that there are certain chemicals at certain pH levels, the chemicals don't work, because you find maybe the water is too acidic, or maybe your waters are too alkaline. Whatever you spray doesn't work. So what you need to do is buffer your water. So buffer is just a chemical that you pour in your water before all these other chemicals. You buffer your water first. It controls the pH, and then the next thing that you need to do is add your chemicals. However, when you are using a buffer, you do not use a copper fungicide. The two are not compatible. Your spray won't work. So if you're going to use copper as a fungicide, you will not use a buffer. If you decide to buffer your water, then you're not spraying with copper. But if you're spraying with copper, you drop the buffer. The two are not compatible. So types of insecticides and fungicides. So we have fumigants. Fumigants works as gas, so these kill hidden pests. For example, you're storing maize, you get those tablets, those, what do they call it? The phosphide tablets, phosphide, bromide phosphide tablets. The ones which they were even using those, that was the time for gassing. Those are the ones they were using. Those control these pests, especially if you are storing seed treatments. They're not for field use, but just killing the pests. Maybe you've stored maize for for the entire year. So before you start eating it, you want to put the gassing chemical. Then we have our residual insecticides. So these remain on the leaf surface to kill on contact. So these kill on contact, and then you apply when the pest populations appear. So when there's a high pest population and you can see it, you apply. Then we have systemic. So these are absorbed into the plant's system. And then, we have those pests which suck. So the pests which suck, like aphids, when they suck onto, maybe you have aphids on your rep, for example, it's sucking on the leaf surface of your rep. When you spray the systemic one, once it sucks, once the aphids suck, you find that they start dying. So for the residual ones, these, even the ones which like are chewing or they are boring into a crop, these are sprayed on them. So on contact, when you see, you can actually see some of the insects, you find that they die. So it's also the same with fungicides. We have contact fungicides. So these are sprayed on the surfaces. And then we have translaminar fungicides, which move from the top to the bottom of the leaf. So once it's sprayed on the top, it moves to the bottom of the leaf. Then we also have the systemic ones, which move through the plant. So what you can do is you can just find out from wherever you're buying that, okay, no, I'm looking for a systemic insecticide, or I'm looking for a contact one. So for example, armyworm, the best one you'd use for armyworm is a contact insecticide, so the residual one, because you can see it there. Once you spray it, you know that it's going to die. And then yeah, so basically just having an idea of what it is. They'll ask some agro dealers will ask, oh, do you want a contact one? Do you want a systemic one? So have this in mind. Contact is what you see. Systemic, what is inside. When the pest comes to eat or it feeds on it, it will die. And even with the fungicides, that's how it works. So systemic, it's you apply before disease onset. So some of these you find that they are more of the preventative, and then most of your systemics are more of the preventative ones. So whatever happens, then your contact, it's there, so you're trying to do more of the curative, but you can still use both interchangeably. So also understand your labels on your bottle. So I have prepared this guide to your safe and effective use. Some of your containers don't even really give you the full story or give you full information. So every pesticide container comes with a label. So that label contains crucial information regarding what is on the bottle, and instructions for your health, environment, and also just helps you ensure you get the best protection. So why are these labels important? These are basically legal documents. Using pesticides contrary to the label instructions can be unsafe and also illegal. So labels provide the safety information for whoever is handling the chemicals and even the one who is applying them. And then they help you apply the correct dosage for effective pest or disease control. They also provide environmental precautions so that you're able to protect insects, your soil, your water, and your animals. And then they guide you on pre-harvest intervals and re-entry periods. So on your bottle, you should always ensure that you read the PHI. It's written when you see something on your bottle as PHI, this is your pre-harvest interval. So it's how many days from spraying you can harvest your crop. So for example, baby crops, they've just germinated. You can do things with a pre-harvest interval of 21 days. But if your crop is almost ready, you can't do 21 days because now it will age in your field and it has chemical. So you opt for things with shorter PHIs, things for 3 days, 5 days is a bit of a stretch sometimes, 1 day. There are those kinds of chemicals because maybe there's really something going on, yeah, at harvest period, but you just really need to control something. Maybe a disease has entered. So you opt for something with a lower PHI, 3 days, 1 day. So for a pesticide with a lower PHI is we have, what do we call this one? The Doom. That's even the same Doom that people drink. That's the one, diclo. The active ingredient is called diclovos. So Doom. That one you can use after 1 day. Maybe you're harvesting rape, but you've noticed that you have aphids, but you really need to spray. So you spray Doom, you spray today, tomorrow you'll be able to harvest because it's just 1 day, but it's also very effective. Then we do have some fungicides that are also about 3 days. So just know the PHI and read the labels. If there's a chemical that doesn't have a PHI, that's when you know there's a problem. But also ask even the one who's selling you the chemical that, okay, what's the PHI for this chemical? I'll soon be harvesting. I still need to do my spraying. So find out all of that information get as you get these chemicals. So when you get your chemical, there's the product name. So it will shows the brand and chemical that controls the pest. Go for the active ingredient. The active ingredient is what does the work. So always check the active ingredient to avoid using the same chemical repeatedly. You can find that maybe the active ingredient, for example, is abamectin. Maybe Syngenta stocks what we call tiger. Then Osho has what we call shark. Because you've bought shark and you've bought tiger, you think they're two different things. What is important is the active ingredient. You find that it's the same active ingredient and you don't want a situation where you've bought the same thing. So go for the active ingredient and see what it is. And then target pests or diseases. So specify which pests or diseases that pesticide controls and use only for those listed targets. Then direction of use, understand how to mix, how to apply, when, where, and how to do it effectively and follow precisely. There are some people you find that they overdose the crop, they don't read the bottle, they just do rough guess, and then they've kind of contaminated the crop, and then even at point of harvest, they're failing to eat it, or maybe it's a home garden, they didn't know what to do or what to spray. There are those challenges, and I've seen people face such challenges where they didn't know how to do the dosage. So basically, even with the chemicals, I think I do have a short exercise I can share with you to just learn how to calculate. If a bottle hasn't given you the exact liters or how to mix, just know that if it says 1 liter per hectare, in a hectare you'd dilute that chemical in 200 liters of water. So you convert your liters, you can do your liters into mils. So it will be 1000 mils to 200 liters of water. And maybe you want to mix in a knapsack sprayer. So you do cross multiplication. So 1000 liters to 200 liter, 1000 mils to 200 liters of water. Then maybe you're trying to do it in 16 liters. So you do 16 liters, then you cross multiply, then you get how much you would need. So those are some of the basic arithmetic that you can do to calculate your chemicals. And if you're really struggling on a particular day, you can always just ask, I'm not sure, how do I do this? And I would be happy to help you calculate. So dosage rate per area or volume, you can, so you should ensure that you don't overuse because you can't scorch your crop. And also frequent use of the same chemical. Maybe you're using the same, you've just bought one pesticide the whole season, you're just using abamectin. You find that when you spray abamectin, it's not working, the pests are not dying. Or you spray, maybe you've just been using one fungicide the whole time, you're spraying, it's not working, so it forms resistant. resistance, meaning that regardless if you spray, it has resistance from the chemical and it will not work. So it's important that you interchange as you do your spray program. So for example, I have a spray book where I write my spray program in. So in that book, I put the date. After I put the date, I put the liters of water I'm mixing in. Yesterday, I spoke of how we do the field demarcations. So I'll say, okay, I'm spraying in block 3A. All right, let's say in block 3A, we have green beans. Block 3A, green beans. In block 3A, green beans, I'll have my sticker, I'll have my buffer, and then I'll have my pesticide and my fungicide. And I'll list all of them. And I'll put the active ingredients that I used. As next to the active ingredients, I'll put the product name so I know, oh, for this particular product, I use this amount and it's calculated. Maybe we have a very big field, so we need 200 liters of water to do the entire spraying of that field. Then you know, okay, for example, on the farm, we've set Tuesdays and Fridays for spray days. This works for us because on Monday we'd have harvested, meaning Tuesday we can do our spray program. Thursday we are harvesting for Friday. Friday the produce has left the farm. We can spray because we harvested on Friday just to prevent disease or whatever. So you can do 2 sprays. There are others who do 1 spray a week. We've opted for 2 sprays. However, if we've noticed that there's a high pest pressure, we could add on maybe something that's very targeted for whatever we're trying to control. And so those are some of the measures that you can use. Then there's also re-entry intervals. Some chemicals have that. So this is the time to wait before workers can safely enter the treated area again without protective gear. So maybe they'll say re-entry interval 2 days. So after 2 days, you can go in and that sort of thing. So safety precautions or personal protective equipment, ensure that there are these goggles, there are those, thick gloves for mixing the chemicals in. The person has boots, the person has goggles, and then they handle the chemicals safely. What we do, there are some chemicals which are powdery in form. So you can even get a cooking stick from your kitchen and it just stays with the chemicals. You don't take it back. That's the one. You know how before you start cooking in Shima, how you mix water and the midi meal, you do that with the chemical so that it doesn't form lumps and then it doesn't spray. So you can have spare containers that you just have specific for mixing some of these things that you keep effectively. Have a storeroom. This thing of keeping chemicals, fertilizers in your house has to stop. Have a storeroom where you can store your chemicals, your sprayers, everything. So that place you can even lock it up. You can even have even just a basic structure to have an office. Your office, you do all your paperwork in there. Aside your paperwork, the books for spraying are in there. Aside that, even payment of workers, you do it from your office. You don't, if you live on the farm, you don't want people coming to your house, so you start paying people from your house. You pay them from the office. You need to discuss an issue, or you need to have a meeting with the worker. You discuss from your office. You don't have to bring them to the house, or you're just sitting under a random tree. Just a very basic structure that you can use, even with burnt bricks. So these are just some of the basic things that you can just put on your farm, so that it even feels more like a business. It has that business feel to it. You're treating it as a business. So also have a first aid kit. And what you can do after people have sprayed chemicals, you can also keep milk there, so that what we used to do, we used to give them 10 kwacha to buy milk, but we noticed that they were not buying milk. So if you have a neighbor with cows, you can just buy that milk. After they finish spraying, they drink a cup of milk. It's good for their health. You don't have a situation long term, the issues of cancer and so on. Just ensure that, you manage the health of your team. or your people, so just have a cup of milk available for them. So even environmental precautions, the water sources. There are people who can be careless with how they're mixing chemicals, have a specific area where chemicals are mixed, water is, all the water things are done. You can do it from a drum. These, these big, big drums, which I think the ones for, is it chlorine, oil? I don't know. You can use those drums for mixing. They are very effective for mixing, especially um larger for 200 liters. You know that, oh, if the drum is 200 liters, a full drum, that is enough for a hectare. So storage and disposal. Don't just dispose of your bottles carelessly. What we've designed is we have a toxic corner on the farm. That's where we have all our spray bottles, where we do burn them, so you can create a toxic pit or a toxic area. And then after a period of time, you just burn those bottles in that area, and that's where you dispose of your chemicals. Because in rural areas, you find you leave bottles carelessly. Next minute, you find people are storing salt inside a bottle for glyphosate. Next minute, people are pouring Chiwantu after, a cooperative meeting. So it's important that you dispose of these chemicals bottles properly, so that people are not using them. Others, you find they become drinking bottles, they start drinking from them. But for the ones which are for foliar fertilizers, those are better than, the actual strong chemicals. So yeah, just always read your label. It will show you how toxic the chemical is. Read the dosage, observe the phi, so that you don't harvest before the time. And then keep, your pesticides locked away, keep them far away. And sometimes you find that because you're doing some of your operations remotely, workers start selling your inputs. They're selling chemicals, they're selling they're selling fertilizers with chemicals. You find they're putting water. They remove some, they've sold it, they're putting, or they have small, small gardens at their places. So even when we're doing spray programs, we keep an eye on the chemicals, because we have situations where um people have their own small gardens, and they're using your chemicals to manage their gardens, your fertilizers to manage their gardens, and it's your things that are now stuck. So yeah, recognize hazard symbols on your bottles. So you see the skull and crossbones, which will show toxic or poisonous, a flame, flammable, exclamation mark, irritant or harmful, environmental hazard, so it's toxic to aquatic life or bees. So yeah, just ensure you have, your PPE, you have the correct clothing and correct attire. So, for example, what to look for? Let's say you've bought, let's say this is Tiger, an example. So the active ingredient on the bottle, maybe we'll say chlorpyrifos, 40%, and then it will say target pest, boreworms. Maybe, oh, my crop gets attacked by aphids or boreworms, caterpillars. The application rate, 200 mils per 20 liters of water. Let's put the PHI, 14 days, re-entry interval, 24 hours, that kind of thing. So all of those things should be on a bottle. So always purchase your pesticides from reputable suppliers to ensure you get quality and genuine products with proper labels. So if you don't know how, if you're unsure how to use it, consult the agro dealer that sold it to you, consult the agronomist from that place. For example, if it's an agronomist from a certain place, you can talk to that agronomist and ask, oh, how do I use this chemical? What is the dosage? And they can advise accordingly. So keep your spray records, so product name, date, rate, weather conditions, maybe if you want to reference, or traceability, so oh, it rained that day, I used this, so it wasn't very effective. Maybe you can have some of those details down. So spray and timing schedule. You spray in the morning, especially when it's not too windy, or you spray in the late afternoon. So what you do, avoid spraying when it's hot, because you don't want to scorch your crop. your crop. And then avoid use of the same chemicals. From even check the chemical group that's also on the bottle. It will show group C, group D. You should also be interchanging those to avoid what we have as the resistance, because they are also of the same family. So just ensure that you control that. And then align spraying with crop growth stages and disease cycles. So just align all your management practices. Just ensure you just align all of your management practices with the growth stage. These are the chemicals, like I mentioned, these are the chemicals when it's very small, these are the chemicals when it's in between, and these are the chemicals at point of harvest. But sometimes you won't be spraying as much because you'll be harvesting even more. So that's something to take note of. Okay. So yeah, no, these bottom notes are just the final summary tips on fertilizers and what you need to know. Let me just get back to where we were. Just a moment, sorry. Okay, so the most important, so now I'm just going to give a takeaway from this section. Know your soil type, your nutrient status, and do your soil test. Fertilizers, apply balanced nutrients. Spray programs, prevent your disease, prevent your pests. You can also use an integrated approach of your pest management. And then record keeping, keep all those records, very important. So invest time and effort into understanding your soils. I mean, you can even do a little more research if you have a bit of time. Just research more on soils, research more on nutrients, pest management, and it will just pay off. Because if your crop is diseased or your crop is infested with pests, it will fetch a lower market price. And you don't want that for yourself. You don't want to be in a situation where you have the lower end of the stick, which is usually the case for us farmers. So we were really talking about pest management in summer, and I think we are this training is more inclined to how you can manage pests in summer. So summer in Zambia means higher temperatures, increased humidity in some areas, and often other places you find that as the summer goes on, there's more rainfall. So all conditions that favor rapid pest multiplication and disease spread. So warm weather boosts insect activity and can also cause pest outbreaks, which can seriously reduce your crop yields and quality if it's not managed well. So aphids, these they attack a wide range of crops. So I've just put a few of them, but it attacks your leafies, so cabbage, tomatoes, onions, beans. You see aphids in there. So they're clustered green, sometimes they're black insects, they're sticky, and they transmit viral diseases, and they have rapid breeding. So they will just increase so rapidly. Then in summer, diamondback moth, this one, it chews all your cabbage, causes a lot of damage. Then we have boreworms, so these bore into your tomatoes, your potatoes, your green beans, in your cabbage as well. So they leave holes in the leaves, the fruits, and you can actually see them. And then we have white flies, so these affect tomatoes, beans. Then we have thrips. These affect your onions. So when you're growing onion, look out for thrips or thrips, others call it. Then spider mites, also in very, very hot weather, it spreads rapidly and then your field dries up. So these are some of the pests that attack a lot of the crops. So you can do an integrated pest management strategy for summer. So crop rotation is key because it helps break pest cycles. And then intercropping, others grow things like marigold. So the marigold flowers in between what the rows. Others do garlic alongside the main crop. And then other things are if you've had a disease crop, you can see like it's very diseased in your field. You can pull it out completely and discard of it so that it doesn't affect the other crops. So for sanitation, you destroy these residues because they do still harbor diseases. And then timely planting, plant early to avoid, peak pest pressure later in the season. So just do follow proper timing of your planting. And then water management, avoid over irrigation to reduce humidity loving pests or like your fungal diseases and spider mites. So control your water as well. Don't overwater, don't underwater, because some of these things do affect pest pressure. And even as a farmer, as you are trying to manage diseases on your farm, for example, you're doing an inspection, you cannot go in a diseased crop, then go in the crop that is not diseased. So if you do that, you've been in the old crop, now you want to go check the young one, you have to change all your clothes, change your shoes, change your shirt, change your trousers, change everything. In other commercial operations, there are showers. Someone has come from another field, they would have to shower to even washing their hair to enter into the other field, because disease management on the farm should be very strict. But then the situation that we have in our farms, the neighbor comes to the neighbor's workers come, they enter the farm, they see other people working, they go in the field, maybe they've been passing through diseases, they bring diseases on your farm. And maybe you're not even present, you're somewhere else, you don't know what has gone on. Diseases have entered your field, it's wiped out because someone was careless. I had a situation where a friend, their neighbor had a chicken disease, so they were doing layers. It wiped out 3,000 layers. So you can imagine the cost of layers, because this was their workers went to go visit workers on the other farm during their breaks or in the weather, it was in the evening, came back, entered the chicken house, and that's how all the chickens died. 3,000 chickens died out of 10,000. So it's just very important. Manage diseases. You start with the undiseased crop and enter in the diseased one, or start in the younger one and end with the older one. So just ensure that you're not spreading diseases. If there are workers working in a particular field, leave them in that field. Don't allow them to cross over. They move from here, one end to the other. They're aimlessly moving on the farm. These are people who spread diseases. Yesterday, I gave an example of the worker that spread red spider, and that was through irrigating. And just him opening the valve where there's the diseased field, he moves this side, he sees that the drip is not dripping nicely, he starts moving everywhere. Before we knew it, the whole crop was gone. So just do those controls where you just control movements of people, especially if you have a new crop coming up and it's quite sensitive to pests and diseases. Then we have mechanical and physical controls. So use physical barriers like fine mesh, nets, or row covers, especially for young plants. Others hand pick larger pests where they just practically they see a large pest, they remove it. You can use sticky traps where they fly. So like if you have tutor, you use tutor traps and you trap them and so forth. And then we also have biological means where you introduce natural enemies. So maybe ladybird beetles for aphids. You can also use bio pesticides, and neem products are also good. Osho has neem oil, very good neem oil. We use that quite a lot. And with the neem oil, it's more or less a PHI of 1 day, so it's not too dangerous. So chemical controls apply only when necessary and based on scouting to avoid, resistance. However, you can do your preventative spray, but interchange them. So you can use selective insecticides that target pests but spare beneficial bacteria, beneficial insects. Then always rotate your chemical classes to prevent your resistance buildup. Follow the recommended dosage, follow the rates. So in summer, you're deciding to go for your summer production. The key is the one who will be spraying. When we were growing cabbage, the one who was spraying, he would take hours to spray because he was so focused on spraying. And even, you know, the technique of the spraying, they take a little longer. Not someone who is just dashing in the field carelessly, aimlessly moving. No, they focus. If it's on tomato, they are really spraying it from the bottom to the top. If you want, you can use a motorized sprayer. However, motorized sprayer is not very good if you have flowering crops. You find you're blowing that thing because it blows like mist, very fine spray, but it will blow off your flowers, and your flowers are your fruit, so it becomes meaningless. So that one is good when the plants are younger, or when your tomatoes are big and then you're using your chemicals that are not very strong. So you can use the motorized sprayer. But the technique is how the person sprays, time of spraying, and just the emphasis. They spray right into the growing point. If it's maize, they spray into the growing point where the armyworm sit or whatever it is. So this one, it's you can read some of these notes on your own. It's mainly aphids. You can spray neem oil or an insecticidal soap in the morning or evenings that encourage ladybirds. The diamond back moth, so you're safer. This is the BT spray, so you remove infested leaves. You can have, and then also avoid broad spectrum insecticides. So I also should have mentioned this. We have what we call narrow spectrum. Narrow is it's very specific focused. Broad is it just covers a wide range. So even as you get, you can say, oh no, I want a narrow spectrum fungicide, or I want a broad spectrum. So those are some of the terms that you can use. So this just tells you the different ways or different controls you can use for some of these pests. But even just asking which chemical can work, which what, you can Google the active ingredients. Osho has Osho, if you go to Osho Chemicals, they have this magazine, and it will tell you all the active ingredients and to list the kind of pest that those active ingredients attack. So even if you don't get an Osho product, you can actually use that magazine as a guide, even in other shops. So it's also really helpful. So this is more or less kind of like a repetitive, how you rotate your chemicals, combining your sticker, your buffer, your pre-harvest intervals, and that sort of thing. And maintain a spray logbook documenting your dates, your products used. All of these are very key. In whatever you do, just document it, record it. Maybe you want to enter into a more formal market, or maybe you found an export market. You can't just do all these things without data on how you're managing the crop, because you don't want a situation where you poison people and then they can't even track where you can't track where things went wrong because you don't keep records. So actually they will never even allow you to supply them without proper records or proper data on whatever you're doing. So it's just important, keep a book. You can do a digital one, you can you can do a digital one, and you can also do the physical one. I do a lot of the physical record keeping, so that works just as fine. And you can also prepare a book specific for sprays, not where you're just doing random things, guesswork. No, we use this one. No, let me ask the worker at the farm what they sprayed. So you should be on top of the game. With that, have the book. You can even do one for fertilization as well, so you have a record. Um, there's Hematon Agro Services Limited. They do have record keeping books. If you feel like maybe you need a specific one, that will be a guide. Or you can use your exercise books. I use the Hematon books. I also use exercise books and just write down. Then after a season, I'm able to check what has happened. Where did things go wrong? So just have that in mind. So even with scouting, be sure to scout 2 to 3 times per week. You should even buy a magnifying glass. If you're doing things like tomato, beans, peppers, potato, buy a magnifying glass. You pick a leaf, it will just show you, oh, this is what's going on. This is the challenge we're facing in our crop. This is what's happening. So a magnifying glass is also very, very, very important and very key as you are doing your disease management, pest management, and also scouting. So if you are unsure, just consult. You can take pictures for an agronomist to help you. They can also just say, oh, this is what it is, come and get this chemical. If you do form good relationships with these people, what you can do is they can even come to your farm, especially if you are close by, the agronomist, to say, okay, let me just come to your farm and we see what the challenge is. Sometimes you even just, you see that there's some yellowing on your crop, pull the leaves, pull out the entire crop, see the roots. Is there anything happening to the roots? What could be wrong? So just have that in mind. And even with disease management, you can also go for an integrated approach for it. So your crop rotation, you can do your seed treatments, use of certified seeds. So if you use your certified seeds, at least you know these seeds were actually treated. You will not have an issue of diseases that you don't want. And then sometimes diseases and lack of nutrients can be mixed up. So as you become more used to growing, you know that no, this is a nutrient deficiency, no, this is a disease. So you get used. So observe your leaves of your crop. Are they curling? Are they rotting? Are they lesions? Are they yellowing? Are they spots? Your fruits, your pods, are they molds? Are they shriveling? So just, be very observant. Go around the field, scout. You can even assign one person just to be scouting. If you're unable to do it, you tell them this is your task every day. You go in the undiseased, then you go in the disease. Tell me what you're seeing. That type of thing. So do things where you maintain a proper spacing so that there's good airflow. There's that you don't have anything that can trigger a disease or anything that can trigger pests. So just keep that in mind. Remove plant residues after harvest. Don't keep anything that was diseased, because for example, you keep a diseased crop. You decide, okay, you decide, I've grown tomato, no, next I'll put potato. These are from the same crop family. So if you rotate these two together, then you decide to leave diseased tomato where you're going to grow potato. Obviously that potato will be affected by the disease. So for example, we've grown green beans, there's mad red spider in the green beans. Then we decide that, okay, we are going to grow, let's say we even say tomato. We know that even tomato can get affected by red spider. So we wouldn't want to do that, because even red spider in tomato is also terrible, 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 terrible. So soil health is also important. This also just helps you have less diseases. So just apply your compost, your green manures. All of this just helps. Then even as a farmer, like I mentioned, we're looking at sustainable farming practices. Prepare a compost heap. compost heaps are not very difficult to make. You do it with your crop residues. So what you can do, you start with grass at the bottom. You can even put your crop residue. You add a layer of manure, whether it's chicken, cattle manure. If it's cattle manure, if you have a lot of it, fine.